Now, today we will add to the communion experience with the addition of taking a few moments to prepare our hearts and minds for sacred instruction. Now, this portion requires the use of one gold raw candle and or one white nectar candle and quality frankincense, which is called senetter in the Kemetic tradition, which translates as divine fragrance. If you don't have these things, it's also fine. You can still gain value from this process nevertheless. So let us begin. Now, as you light your candles and your incense, take a few moments and allow the spirit of quietude to alight upon you. And then sooner before later, you'll notice that something as unassuming as lighting a candle and burning incense can make you instantly and automatically relax. Relaxation leads to your peace. Your peace opens the way to your power. And as you sit with an aura of calmness and contemplate the energy of the day, with every inhalation and exhalation, all static energy, stagnant energy, and negative energy gets pushed outwards and away until only you remain perfectly centered and calm, like the black dot in the center of the circle, or the symbol of Ra. Now, after your next few breaths, you'll be ready to emerge, relaxed, refreshed, and renewed, and fully capable of grasping the lessons and the layers of today's sacred instruction. Amen. Maat. Yiti, and welcome to the Communion Experience. This is your host, the Nasip Biddy Rasan Ku Kepper, Chief and Head Priest of the Templeofanu, facilitating our bi-weekly discussions about how to walk in peace and power by way of the teachings of the ancient Kemetic legacy. Now let us proceed to get into what we call the word of the day. The word of the day is when we take one word from the ancient hieroglyphic language known as Sesh Meroneter, which translates as the divine written word. Now we take one word and we give some cultural background of it, or what it meant in ancient times, and then we take its metaphysical and spiritual import and apply it in context of our current circumstances, situation, and lifestyle. Now let us proceed. Now the word of the day is Sekhem. Sekhem is the word of the day. Now we usually proceed with the spelling of the word, and then we go back over for metaphysical and spiritual significance and context. Now the word Sekhem means power or authority, or one who is in possession of a power or authority. And it also means to apply one's will. So the word Sekhem consists of 4 symbols. The first symbol is that of a piece of folded cloth, which represents the letter S with the sound value of S. The second symbol is an Abba staff, or a Sekhem staff, or a Sekhemet. Sekhemet is a sistrum which looks almost identical to the Sekhem staff. And this symbol almost represents a determinative, although it's not a determinative. As we went over before, determinative gives you a context clue on which direction you may need to go to translate or interpret a word. But in this sense, it's not a determinative. It's what's known as a trilateral. A trilateral is when you have one symbol, but is pronounced with 3 syllables. So Sekhem is 3 syllables. Sekhem. The next symbol is the placenta, which has come up in previous communions in the words of the day. The placenta represents the letters KH with the sound value of Kha. the letters KH with the sound value Khe. And lastly, we have the owl. The owl represents the letter M with the sound value of M or M. So there you have it. Sekhem, power, authority, the application of the will, one who possesses power, one who possesses authority, almost like an electromagnetic field, which is a result of an internal process. So let us go to the top for metaphysical importance, significance. So now we go to the folded cloth. The folded cloth in the living tradition represents something that is prepared to either cleanse something or to cover something. When you cleanse something or cover something in the spiritual tradition, that signifies that that thing is sacred. The word sacred literally translates as something or a thing that is set apart from all other things. For instance, if you have a particular setup for like your altar, you have a table for your altar, which consists of a table with white cloth as a foundation, with fruit, a glass of water, a bowl of water, incense, pictures, etc., what have you. When you start using the table for that purpose, that table is no longer a normal table. That table becomes sacred. That table becomes set apart from all other tables that you use in the house. So you don't set anything else on it. You don't eat on it. You don't use it for any other mundane purposes. It becomes something that is sacred. Now, the second symbol is, like I said, is the Abba staff or the second staff, or even the Sekhem, which is a sistrum, which looks very similar to the Sekhem staff. Now, the top of the Sekhem staff or the Sekhem, the sistrum, is a loop known as the naos. The naos is known as the holiest of holies in Greek. In Maronetta, that would be Jeseru. Remember, we just talked about what is sacred, that which is set apart. Inside the Jeseru is known as the Kera, the shrine, which consists of the image, the divine image of the deity, or the Neter or the Neteret. Because all images, there are images in the world, but there's images that are set apart with metaphysical and spiritual import, that are placed inside a Kera, that are placed inside the Jeseru, which the Greeks called the naos. The next symbol would be the placenta. The placenta, we went over in other communions before. The placenta is a temporary organ that exists to connect the fetus to the uterine walls, which transport oxygen and nutrients to the fetus. And it expels waste also from the body, because the fetus is a living being that exists within the body of the mother. So what the mother takes in, it converts into a usable form of energy for the child within. So the placenta represents something that is cultivated from within. And lastly, you have the owl. The owl is a bird that we all know is a nocturnal animal, and it always chants who. The word night is the word ger in Maronetta, as in Reyu Pert im Heru im Ger. The chapters are coming forth by day into the night. But what's interesting about the owl and the word night is the word for silence also, as in the root to the word gerumaya or gerumeya, which means he who is self-mastered, or one who is self-mastered through silence. So there you have it. Sekhem. Sekhem is power, authority, the application of the will. So it is power and authority that is a result of something sacred, something that is set apart. And what is that thing that is set apart is an internal process of cultivation, signified through or by way of the placenta, and self-mastery by way of the owl and its connection to Ger, night, and self-silence. So Sekhem is a staff or a sistrum that represents as a symbol, as the result of the internal process of cultivation and mastery. So it represents kind of like your electromagnetic field. The word Sekhem brings to mind a man called Ra'u Nefer Amen, affectionately and respectfully known as Sekhem or Shechem of the International Asar Set Society. Now, Sekhem or is one of the Renu, the sacred names of Ra. It means the great power. In the Nasut Bidi Unas, it said in the pyramid text, he's referred to as the Sekhem or Sekhem in Sekhemu, means the great power, the power amongst the powers. So now in African tradition, or many African traditions, especially in Ghana, they have a title known as the Asante Hene, which means the paramount chief. What does the paramount chief mean? Para means beyond. It's a Greek word that means beyond. The mount means the highest point, beyond the highest point. So the Asante Hene is not a king. The Asante Hene is more like an emperor. An emperor makes kings. So it's the king of kings. So when you hear Sekhem or Shechem, or as they say, Shechem or Shechem is the most powerful of all the powerful ones, because Shechem or Shechem in his society, he makes kings. So, and they have districts throughout or chapters throughout the states that he initiates kings into those societies. In all actuality, Shechem or Shechem was one of the first melanated people over here in the West to get installed as a chief or a king by a chief or a Asante Hene in Ghana. I think he was installed from 2 separate times. That's when he went from Ra Strong to Shechem or Shechem, now known as Shechem or Sekhem of the Asar Set Society. In all actuality, I met Shechem or Shechem several times. It was like 30 years ago when I was in a different phase in my manifestation or my incarnation as a martial arts instructor, African martial arts instructor. Me and my partner and I, we had a school, and we've trained ourselves, or we gave ourselves the mission to present ourselves to African-centered organizations to train them to defend themselves in African-centered martial arts, to keep everything congruent, because to us it didn't make sense to talk about African power or Black power, but yet you're taking Asian martial arts. So we notified the Asar Set Society that we would want to make a presentation for them. And they have these monthly ceremonies dedicated to the deities. Now, in our Shule, our patron neter was Heru. So Asar Set had something called a Heru ritual that fell on a sacred month. So we saw it fitting for us to attend that Heru ceremony. So we went as a school to some undisclosed location in Brooklyn, New York, back at the time. Once again, this is like 30 years ago. So we got to the place, and it appeared to be like a warehouse. And when we got inside, I noticed, it was very impressive. I saw what I believe to be a restaurant inside, a clothing store inside, a bookstore inside. Back at that day and time, Asar Set was the most organized out of everybody in the Kemetic community. You had Smai Tawi that we went over before in several communions ago, and then there was Asar Set, and they appeared to be the most organized out of all of the Kemetic temples and shrines at the time. So we were directed to go to the restrooms to change our clothes. So you come in your street clothes, and then you come change. You don't come from the street with your spiritual clothes on. We went to the bathroom, we changed into our whites and our reds, because white and red is sacred to Heru. So we were shown to our seats by the Kerheb. The Kerheb gave us some oils with frankincense so we could anoint ourselves. They had a protocol, lovely protocol. So as the ritual began, so we were set in the guest area, which was a few feet away from Shechem or Shechem and his wives in his royal court, up front in the center of the floor. So we're sitting there, just patiently waiting about when our time will be to perform our martial demonstration to the community. Then I noticed Sekhem signaled his Kerheb to come over, and they were looking at us, and he was whispering something in his Kerheb's ear. Then the Kerheb came over to my partner and I and signified that we were to come up to the front, not to perform, but to sit with Sekhem or Sekhem. And I was like, oh, wow. I was like in my 20s at the time. That I was like, wow. So we're sitting up there with him and his wives in his royal court, and we're seeing with a panoramic view. I see my school to the side and the rest of the congregation out front. And you could hear the Heru priests in the back doing their chanting, prepared to come out front. And that was a very impactful experience for me. that, like that he recognized the potential and the power that we were coming with as an organization, and that he respected and honored us, because it's not enough etiquette and protocol these days. Everyone's often trying to outshine each other or try to ignore the significance and the contributions of each other. So he was not intimidated by who we were, or what it was that we were trying to do. He wasn't in fear that we was trying to steal his congregation, anything. He treated us with the highest honors. I say this because just a few weeks ago, us here at the Templeofanu, we were talking about a trip that we went to Ohio with another temple that we were going to celebrate a holiday with. And then there was a young lady that was a follower of us online, and I was familiar with her. She practiced yoga. She appeared to be very passionate about yoga, and she was telling of her experience, how it was when she first met us. And she said we just had a powerful presence. And she said I asked her to lead our community through some yogic breathing and exercise sizes. And so she said she was nervous and she got through it, but her words was, she said, I felt like I was amongst royalty. Until this day, that sister is one of our most loyal and upstanding and profound students and initiates of the Templeofanu. I say this to say that somehow I paid something forward. I was impacted by something that Ra'u Nefer did for me, that made me feel, that reinforced something within me, and I paid it forward unconsciously to now one of my students. So for that, I say big up to Ra'u Nefer Amen, or Anezrak, the Sekhem Ra'u Nefer Amen of the now international Osara Set Society. So there you have it, Sekhem as the word of the day, through the principle of as above, so below, so within, as without. And now for our discussion of the day. What have you learned thus far? Now we're about 6 months into the year, halfway through the calendrical year, and we've gone over with great detail many of the themes that have governed our lives for the year thus far. What have you learned? You've learned that the Neter Impu represent the metaphoric death, radical change, endings, closure, abrupt closure or abrupt ending. What did you learn about the Neteret Wajet? You learned about the rising and cyclical psychic energy, the rising and cyclical and renewal of psychic energy. So what, have you experienced any abrupt endings? Have you experienced anything that you had to put on pause? Have you experienced a metaphoric death? And if you have, put in the chat or put in the comment section, yes, many of these things have come to pass. And I just want to say also that these principles for the most part are neutral, and it often comes down to our maturity or our naivety on how we choose to color or interpret an experience. For instance, radical change, death, none of these things, completion, endings, none of that have to mean anything bad. It can mean something positive also. For instance, out of curiosity, you could be surfing the housing market or the apartment market, and you've seen something that caught your eye, that's right up your alley, right within your price range of your budget, which influenced you to make the decision to break your lease, to act on this new opportunity that you feel is in your best interest. That's a radical change, especially for your landlord. If you had to break the lease, that's a radical change. The same thing that could happen in the job market. You could just be curiously and randomly keeping up with what's out there on the market, and you find something right up your alley. You find that you're qualified, and that's the amount of money that you wanted to make in this ideal location, ideal job situation, which causes you to put in your 2 weeks notice, or maybe not put in your 2 weeks notice and quit or resign immediately. That's a radical shift. That's a radical change. You may have been dealing with the issue for the greater part of 10 years. And now all of a sudden, somehow within the past 6 months, you just decided, I don't care about it no more. It's no longer an issue. It's a non-factor. And I want you to now remember that everything that's going on in your life and your circumstances now, and with the world, with wars and everything, are a reflection of what's going on with us personally as well as collectively. Remember, everything that's going on in your personal circumstances, as well as the world with the wars and the state of the condition of the world now, is a reflection of what's going on personally as well as us collectively. Now, some people could say, well, I don't like my current circumstances. I like to believe that I think positive, and I see people in worse circumstances, and nobody in their right mind would bring these things upon themselves. And that's the operative word, the right mind. A lot of people give a lot of credit to the conscious mind, but it's the subconscious mind is the thing that is actually creating your reality, not the conscious mind. The subconscious mind imprints the spirit. And this is why you have to have education. Education is not about the hive mind. Education, from the word educo, which means to come up out of the self, to come up out of something. That is what education means. Many people don't know that all of your experiences are colored by experiences you have from age 0 to 14. That is because that's when you came into existence. Everything that you know about what a human being is, from your mother, your father, to authority figures, or the lack of proper mother and father authority figures and friends, all of those things are like tuning forks. They were struck. Those were your first experiences, and they were struck. And ever since then, they've been reverberating and coloring and sometimes corrupting every thought, word, and deed ever since. So that means just because you don't understand your current circumstances or how you got there doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just represents a reflection of your current vibration and your current frequency. It's just reflecting to you back your incongruencies and your inconsistencies of where you are in your vibration, of who you are, of who you say you are, who you believe yourself to be. And I say the word belief because belief is a mental acceptance. Who do you accept yourself to be? When you talk about belief and mental acceptance, we have to talk about the law of sustenance, or the law of sustaining. With that, we're talking about your identity. Your identity drives your behavior. So as long as you can identify with the thing that you want to be or become, that is going to determine the power and the rate of how it manifests in your life. For instance, if you are sick currently and you want to be well, so in the metaphysics we teach you have to align yourself with a person who is healthy, whole, and sound. And as long as you can keep that, you will vibrate yourself into good health. However, if you're trying to be healthy, but with every cough and every discomfort, if that makes you discouraged, so if the discouragement and the discomfort is greater than your identity with being well, your vision is going to fit, your manifestation is going to fall flat, and it's going to run out of steam because you shifted your identity with being healthy, whole, and sound to being uncomfortable and disappointed or discouraged. The same with being a millionaire. You're like, oh, I want to be a millionaire. I deserve to be a millionaire. I'm going to act like how a millionaire acts. And then the phone call comes and you get the bill. Get the bill for the children, the bill for the food. And then that hurts your ego. That gets you discouraged. So now you shifted your identity from being wealthy to one that's being disappointed and discouraged. That is the law of sustenance. That law of sustenance reveals cognitive dissonance in your life when your actions contradict the words. So you're saying you're this and you're saying that you're that, but your actions contradict it. That's revealing the law of sustaining in your life. This is why certain people could take certain principles, certain people could do certain rituals, and their life become magical. And yet when it's your turn to do the very principles and stuff, you don't get the same results. And you're like, this don't work. I think this is nonsense. I think this is a scam. No, it's all because of identity. That person is able to hold on to their identity longer than you. And you might have a negative anchor coming from ages 0 to 14 in your life. In the back of your mind, that's reverberating in your mind and your consciousness. Could be that time your mother irresponsibly called you stupid, or implied that you were stupid, or somehow you interpreted your mother thought you were stupid, or the look of disappointment on your father's face when you lost the game, or the embarrassment of not even having a father to be disappointed in or from. Or what about when you're playing and the kids are laughing because you don't have the clothes that's in style at the time? What about when someone called you ugly? What about when you didn't get invited to the junior prom? What about when you didn't get invited to the prom? So these are our first experiences with authority figures and people in general, and they reverberate in all our relationships. And this is why you can't get away from meditation and quietude and going within yourself and clearing that mirror up to be a proper representation of yourself. So there it is. In one reality, you are innocent. No, you didn't bring anything on yourself consciously. You didn't consciously undermine your forward progress, your success, and your happiness. However, the universal law is always in operation, whether we participate or we don't participate. Us as mystics and us as initiates, we are offered the opportunity of being co-creators with Kepara. That means we're offered the opportunity to be co-creators in the creation and the evolution of what we experience. You're left with two opportunities at this point. You could be innocent, which is synonymous of ignorant, which is synonymous of unconsciousness, and submit yourself to the zodiac and astrology, which is the default system of the universe for resetting balance. Yes, if you get into these sciences, what you'll see that most of the major events in the world, they were already predicted one way or another through zodiac and astrology. And that every experience that you go through, whether good or bad, is getting you to eventually become the higher version of yourself. It's just a long, arduous path. Everything is always in divine order even when it's not appearing to be in divine order. The second option you have is to be a spiritual adult and claim your spiritual sovereignty as well as your spiritual identity, and take responsibility for your life and what it is that you want with your life. And this is why you hear me talk about where we're at a crossroads at some point. There has to be something done with all the information, all the experiences we had in the past, with all the new information you've come across about yourself and what it is that you've been meant to become. And this is where a lot of Kemites get in trouble. A lot of very high spiritual people find themselves challenged at, because we have the spiritual philosophy that tells you that you're God, the owners, makers, cream of the planet Earth, father of the civilization, God of the universe, Baipu Neta, Baipu Heck, my soul is divine, my soul is eternal. We have all of this good stuff that's telling us that we're the best thing since the pyramids. Yet all the while in the back of ourselves, we're internally self-loathing, like a record skipping or a CD skipping, and we caught on a loop of a negative experience that we're playing over and over and over like it's a sacred chant or a sacred scripture. So what is the mystic to do? What is the initiate to do? Me personally, I like to stay focused on my chief purpose in life and rest in my divinity. Of course, I'm aware of all the things that's going on in the world. Of course, you can't ignore it. I'm not stupid. I'm an adult. Yes, I'm aware, but I don't allow it to distract me from my chief purpose or resting in my divinity. I say, okay, that's crazy. That's kind of crazy. That's curious, but okay, whatever. I don't worry about things that I can't directly do anything about. So I go back to resting in my divinity. I have people in my circle that keep me looped in on, quote unquote, looped in about what's going on in the world to keep me informed. And sometimes we get into provocative conversations about this and that, and then it coaxes me to get into some type of metaphysical expose on why other people do what it is that they do. And then I have to pull back and be like, that has nothing to do with me or what it is that I'm here to do or what it is that I'm here to bring to the world. So I go back to resting in my divinity. I even get to a point where I feel like there's some type of this conspiracy from people not wanting me to be at peace or to be happy, because to be at peace and to be happy is our natural state. you wake up at peace and you wake up happy until things of the outside world, till you made yourself aware of things of the outside world. But peace and happiness is our natural state. The mystic, the initiate, is looking for the love, is looking for the joy, is looking for the positivity in life. At any given moment, a baby is being born by a loving couple. At any given moment, someone's graduating high school, someone's graduating college, someone's starting their entrepreneurial premiere, someone's coming into themselves. There's lots of positive things, but somehow someone decided that negativity is way more sexy and attractive and more interesting. So some people ask, are you not really concerned with the state of the world? What about the bombing of Israel, the bombing in Iraq and those people over there? Once again, I cannot worry about anything that I can't directly do anything about. Those wars over there are tied into a mythology that I don't even follow or that I don't subscribe to. And all you could do is give a few breaths and give a few prayers to those deities or energies or Neteru that's governing that situation for it to work out in a way that's mutually beneficial for all of us. Because me not being the best or bringing what it is that I'm supposed to bring to the world is not helping those people over there. So people are like, so are you really not concerned? So I may have moments to be like, oh, that's kind of crazy. Somebody needs to do something about that. But as a mystic and as an initiate, this is the way you're supposed to see it. So when we see these wars and things going on and we feel like someone has to do something about it, remember I told you these things are metaphors of what's going on within ourselves. So what's going on in our personal lives as well as the world with the wars and all of this, reflections of our internal processes personally as well as collectively. So when these things happen, and when I get into these things, when I get into that I got to do something outside of myself, outside of resting in my divinity, I ask, what wars, what storms, what missiles, or what bombs are going off and exploding within inside myself that are against myself? Because these things are just metaphors of moral failings and disempowering beliefs and thoughts about ourselves or myself. So now you have to ask, where are these thoughts coming from? Where do they come? Why am I thinking this way? Because in order for that thing to happen in the outside world, there's some things that we're thinking and feeling about ourselves inside. That is metaphysical law. Whether you participate in it consciously or unconsciously, the law will always be working. And ignorance is not an excuse. Could it be parasites? Parasites are part of the natural biome of the earth. The parasites are not just in meats. The parasites are on fruits, vegetables. They're inside our body. There's a healthy amount of parasites you can have, and then there's an unhealthy amount of parasites you can have. Now, most people don't know that when parasites excrete their waste in our intestines, it affects our brain. You have three brains. You have the stomach, you have the heart, and then you have the brain that's in the cranium. The brain communicates with the body by way of the spine and neurons in the nervous system. The stomach has 900 million more neurons than the spine. So there's much communication going on between the brain and the stomach. And if you look at the image of the brain and you look at the image of the intestines, that's a prime example of as above, so below. So if you have intestines infested with parasites that's excreting waste in your system, it begins to clog and fog your thinking, causing you to have inappropriate and disempowering beliefs and thoughts about yourself. It is the thing that may make you reach for the soda. It may be the thing that makes you reach for the weed, the alcohol, or indulge in lustful desires or behaviors that's not beneficial for you in the long run. So what's a mystic to do? What's a sage to do? What's an initiate to do? You have to cleanse. If you know anything about the Kemetic tradition, that everyone's always talking about a cleanse, a seasonal fast, a seasonal cleanse. There's 4 seasons over here in the Western Hemisphere. So we have 4 opportunities to stay aligned. So you have to clean that gut. But it's not just about the gut. You have to now clean your aura. You have to go to that bathhouse. You have to get into the spiritual baths and the spiritual showers. Then you also have to cleanse yourself from social media. Because someone out there is curating your experience to you, causing you to reverse engineer your natural divine process of creating your reality. I'll say it again. Someone out there is curating your experience to reverse engineer your natural and your organic ability to create your reality. So what I mean by that? So if you think something and you feel something, you create something. Again, if you think something and you feel something intently, that thing will eventually become a creation. So the life as you know it, the circumstances that you know, the details of the circumstances that you're in, those are all old thoughts that came into fruition, thoughts that you thought of consciously and unconsciously. They came into fruition. Now, someone through social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, they keep, it's called the algorithm. They keep feeding you an algorithm. And this algorithm is causing you to think about that. It's causing you to feel about that. So if thinking and feeling intently about something is the art and science of bringing something into creation. Somebody's giving you what to think and feel about. Therefore, you keep investing and sustaining this messed up reality as it is. So the only way to break that is you have to fast from social media, fast from putting poison in your body, and cleanse your auric field to create a neutral space in order for you to recreate yourself. That's what you're left with. So if attention is currency, someone's taking your money. Someone's taking your attention, and someone's pimping and curating your intention. Now, to go back to the top, what have you learned? You keep hearing me talking about a crossroads or an impasse, meaning this, you got to do something with everything that you've learned so far. You can't just be learning for the sake of learning. You have to do something. And it's a crossroads, not just of the things that you learn. It's a crossroads from your past, not just your current existence. We're talking about from existence up until now in the current state of the world. What have you learned? What's it all amount to? Is it just a bunch of notebooks or for your digital record just to say that you paid attention? Or will it be shifts, changes, and transformations for the better as receipts that you paid tuition in the school of life, in the school of hard knocks? What have you learned? Have you just learned to associate yourself with yet a new ethnicity or new and exotic ways just to say that you're black? I say time's up. Not that we've run out of time. I'm saying time's up. I mean, it's our time to now make our deposit and our contribution to history. When you look at African Americans or indigenous people from over here in America and our contributions to civilization, you'll see that a good 70 to 80% of most inventions came from melanated people. But these melanated people didn't do it for melanated people. They did it to be a part of the dominant society. And the dominant society took these things and they buried our ancestors in the annals of history, in the annals of time. It's still there for the record, but it's not known officially for the record. And people may ask, why do I keep talking about race if I'm talking about the high spiritual stuff? Because the melanated people, African people, have no friends. Everyone's taking our resources and they're moving on and they're advancing their nation. So as long as I'm in existence and I come in this vessel of a melanated being, I got to look out for my people. And then I say, it's time for us now to make our deposit in our contribution. I look at the example of Ibrahim Traore. I keep mentioning him because he's a good example. The man survived 19 assassination attempts. He's going to go down in history just for that, but not just for that. He's united Mali, Burkina Faso, in Niger. So he's becoming a Pan-Africanist. And now that region of Africa is now entering the chat of the world, that they're ready to take responsibility for how they feed themselves, how they educate themselves, and to gain respect as a new and emerging world power. Not to say that we got to go over to Africa, but we need to learn from that experience. Us as Kemites, us as spiritual people, melanated people, are you willing to unite and create a new narrative with like-minded people so we can now step on the chat and now start redefining what the so-called Black experience is? I could tell you that our ancestors are proud but they're not impressed. They are proud, but they're not impressed because still, even with all the knowledge and information that we've gotten to this point, there's still way too much victim consciousness going on, way too much victim vernacular going on. Oh, how can they won't let me do this because I'm black? They can't do this because I'm black. They won't let me do it because I'm a black man. They won't let me do it because I'm a black woman. They won't let me do it because I'm heterosexual. You know how the story goes. So we have to shift from victim consciousness that used to be a superpower, but that's hit a ceiling now. It doesn't serve us to identify with all the wrongs that's been done to us. Now we have to shift to neter consciousness, neteru consciousness, ancestral consciousness, universal consciousness, because through that, that's when you'll break the barriers. That's what our ancestors did. They didn't do what they did because they were black. They did because they was tapped in, and that's where we are. So to bring it full circle back to Sekhem, Sekhem is a staff or system that represents a symbol that is a result of cultivating an internal process of self-mastery through not being afraid of the dark, or not being afraid to be silent, not being afraid to temporarily isolate yourself till you collect yourself. So these days, I'm hard pressed to find new and exciting things to talk about. These days, it's hard to even tell people or advise people what to do because we've been ignoring the 500-pound elephant in the room, which is you have to be. Everything is about being. Be the best version of yourself. Be all that you can be, because when you be, everything that you do from that becomes authentic. When you be the best version and you be the highest version, everything that you do becomes authentic, therefore making everything that you do the right thing. I'll conclude the lesson there. Hopefully you're able to appreciate the lessons and the many layers of lessons that are inside the lesson. So if you feel so inclined, if you want to donate to us, you could donate to us in Cash App or PayPal, Templeofanu. And with that being said, until the next time, this is your host in the Sip Biddy Rasan Kepper. Let us say Shini Matep. Dianu Okuja Seneb. Stay dangerous.